Ideas that have the power to alter our perceptions of death, life, and reality itself. Now, before you draw any judgments, we understand that this may seem like fiction, a dramatic tale designed to arouse interest. However, in 2022, a manuscript credited to Gödel was found in a double-bottomed ancient safe in Princeton. These confessions may change humanity or destroy it was the document's opening phrase, which chilled readers. The anonymous journalist asks a straightforward but thought-provoking question at the start of the interview. Professor Einstein, do you believe in life after death? A protracted delay occurs, the type of silence that speaks louder than words. Then Einstein smiled faintly. To believe is not the right word, he responds. At my age, I would rather be informed. The interviewer was taken aback by that response. He then pressed harder. However, the concept of a soul has always been rejected by science. Your science, hasn't it? Einstein leaned closer. You believe that I'm speaking from faith? He inquired. No, this isn't faith, it's information. I've noticed deep patterns that most people miss. As I worked on my idea of unified fields, I started to discover something odd. There is a link between energy, matter, and even mind. Atoms were believed to be the smallest and most indestructible building components of the universe at the beginning of the 20th century. However, we were mistaken. The majority of the atom is made up of empty space. There are vibrations, a sort of buzz that permeates the void, beyond that emptiness. That's not the end, though. Beyond the tremors lies in the mind. He took a moment to allow the words to sink in. Are you aware of the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen paradox? He then inquired. The reporter said, yes. It's the concept of quantum entanglement. No matter how far apart two particles are, they remain connected once they are coupled. Slowly, Einstein nodded. Indeed. However, this goes beyond particles. It's a hint. It demonstrates how interconnected everything is. And perhaps, just possibly, that also applies to consciousness if it is true in physics. Why can't two minds stay connected if two particles can stay connected over space, even after death? A shiver ran through the reporter's body. Suddenly, as though the air itself had changed, it seemed colder. After a moment of hesitation, he said, "But Professor, if you're correct, that implies..." Einstein completed the concept for him by saying, that consciousness doesn't live in the brain. The source is not the brain. The receiver is the one. Consider it analogous to a radio receiving a signal. The song just ceases playing over the radio when it breaks, not that it ceases to exist. In a similar vein, consciousness does not expire with the body. The signal, carried by an unseen entity, is still present. Some refer to it as the ether. It persists even if the receiver stops functioning, much like radio waves. As he returned to his notes, the reporter's hand shook a little. Why now? Quietly, he inquired. After so many years of silence, why bring up this topic now? While Einstein's voice remained solid and composed, his eyes softened. Because I'm running out of time, he stated. I sense that I'm getting close to the edge, and I cannot let this truth perish with me. A profound insight is closer than ever to humanity, one that might alter our perspective on death and life. However, time is crucial. This truth will be abused if it becomes widely known too soon. It could be weaponized, twisted, or used for control or power. I haven't said anything because of this. However, I believe the era of unadulterated materialism is coming to an end. Spirituality and science will soon collide, and a new route will emerge once they do. The sound of the clock striking midnight abruptly disturbed the silence. The chamber reverberated with the hefty, purposeful bells. The reporter raised his head. It feels metaphorical, he muttered, as if what you're saying is supported by the universe itself. Einstein was not amused. "You ask what's waiting for us after death," he added simply. "It's a complex answer. It is totally dependent on our life experiences. People who pursued pleasure, power, and self-interest, who solely had their own interests in mind, find it difficult to move on. They become mired in their own creations. They are still mired in their history's shadows. However, those who pursued the truth, showed great love and assisted others, they succeed. They approach the origin of everything. They discover tranquility and possibly a fresh start." The reporter's eyes became a little wider. "What are you saying? Rebirth?" Einstein nodded slightly. "Indeed. It's not automatic, though. Nothing is coerced. There is always an option. Free will is the greatest law of all. Consciousness has the ability to reappear repeatedly in order to develop, learn, and assist. But it has the option to stop when it's ready. Ancient beliefs referred to that time as liberation. The soul does not disappear when it occurs. It develops into something bigger. It comes back to the source as light, pure, and loving, not as an empty shell. There isn't any fear, no discomfort, simply unity." He looked into the pitch-black night sky beyond the window. "Everyone is a traveler," he declared. "And demise, it's not a wall, it's a door." There was silence in the room. Everything that had just been spoken weighed heavily on the reporter. There was a part of him that wanted to probe farther. He had the impression that one more query may reveal a reality that would permanently alter his course in life. However, he asked a different question, one that was more concerning. "Why don't other bright minds discuss it if what you're saying is true?" he started. "Why is it so silent?" Einstein's face lit up with a small, almost melancholy smile. He stated, "Because the truth is dangerous, because it frees, not because it hurts, and freedom is feared by those in authority. Being made fun of is a fear that scientists have. Religious leaders fear that they will lose power. Politicians are terrified of independent thinkers. Truth is not someone's property. You can't own it. Thus, a lot of people are afraid of it. Newton, Planck, Tesla, and others were aware of the truth. Even Darwin, who was nearing the end of his life, began to feel that everything was being guided by something deeper. However, the majority of them said nothing, or they used metaphors to conceal their thoughts. So did I. For the most part of my life, I kept quiet. But I can finally talk now that I have nothing to lose." Every statement was captured by the journalist recorder, which kept spinning. As though he were perched on the brink of something immense and unknown, his heart was pounding. Leaning back, Einstein's voice became silent once more. E equals sine mc squared, which is the equation for which I am famous. It demonstrated that energy and mass are identical, albeit in various forms. I haven't said anything else in public, though. Additionally, consciousness is a type of energy. Though far more subdued, it is equally genuine. Moreover, energy never dies. It changes. Consciousness takes a different shape when the body quits functioning. It has gone by several names in various cultures, including soul, spirit, and Atman. The name is irrelevant. The important thing is that it goes on. The reporter's following inquiry was hardly audible. Then, does death not exist? Einstein gave him a gentle, weary glance. Death is real, but it's not what people think it is. People die. Individuals lose their personalities. It will all make sense when we look back from a higher perspective, even if we don't grasp it now. We'll discover that we were never truly alone, not even for a moment. We are all traveling in the same direction, toward the same light. Outside, the clock chimed once more. The time was 1 a.m. After sitting motionless for a while, Einstein leaned forward. His tone shifted, become more intense and strong. He continued, Before we finish, I have something to say." He hesitated, trying to find the proper words, then said, "Something I can't leave out. I've noticed a rather concerning trend lately. The world is changing more quickly than ever. Our ideals aren't keeping up with the rapid advancement of technology. Despite the fact that machines have brought us closer together, we nevertheless feel more alone than ever. Individuals are starting to view one another not as fellow humans, but as dangers. And that's risky, very risky. I worry that we won't survive the next century if we continue to divide ourselves and forget that we are all members of the same human family." He met the reporter's gaze directly. His eyes were intense and unwavering. "I consented to this interview for that reason," he stated. "It might be my last. However, I want you and anybody else who reads these words to remember that death isn't the end. No one else is our true enemy. Ignorance is the true threat. It causes blindness. However, knowledge, true comprehension, is like light, and darkness is always pushed away by light." Something stirred deep within the journalist. He felt as though he had just witnessed something significant, something that had the potential to alter not only his own life but the entire planet. It was more than just feeling. Now speaking softly, Einstein went on. "Talk to others about these ideas, but don't pressure them. You can't force the truth on someone. Each person must arrive at it in their own time and manner. People frequently inquire about what occurs after death. However, that may not be the correct question. Perhaps how we decide to live before it is more important. And if there is one thing that is genuine and eternal, it is love. Love is the only thing that endures." The reporter paused to catch his breath. Knowing that he might not have another chance, he sensed time ticking away. He plucked up the nerve to ask the question he had been putting off. "Professor, is it ever possible to show that what you're saying is true? Is it possible to be certain that awareness continues after death?" As though he were seeing something that no one else could, Einstein leaned back and looked off into space. He stated that things we can measure and repeat are what science depends on. However, not all experiences operate in that manner. They cannot be replicated in a laboratory. Nevertheless, they do occur. "You know," he remarked, almost to himself, "I used to think that discovering the laws of the universe was the most important thing in life. I intended to use a single formula to unlock everything. However, as I grew older, I realized that understanding who you are and how closely you are related to other people is the biggest obstacle. You can spend your entire life studying science. However, what is life's purpose? Everyone has to discover that for themselves." He stopped and gazed up at the gradually bluened sky. Because we believe that death signifies the loss of something, we fear it. In actuality, though, we gain nothing. Love, generosity, and memories, the things that truly count, stick with us. Even if we don't entirely grasp how, they continue. Quietly, the reporter shut his notebook. He said, "Thank you, Professor. I'll ensure that what you said is remembered." He received a soft grin from Einstein, a smile that was both sorrowful and hopeful. "Avoid simply repeating them," he said. "Consider them. Think about them." In the most basic and kind way possible, they shook hands. As they parted ways, Einstein remarked, "Live without fear. Be curious in life. That is the only thing that counts." The reporter went outside into the crisp morning air. The door behind him closed slowly. His surroundings were unchanged, but something within him had changed. What comes after isn't as important as what we choose to do now. He never wrote another word in the notebook after opening it for the final time. The first green leaves of spring were starting to emerge as he strolled down a peaceful street. "We appreciate you staying until the very end. If this got you thinking, please like and subscribe for more thought-provoking articles. We read all of your comments, so please share your opinions. Until the next time, be careful and keep in mind that truth frequently whispers. An interview that was never intended for public consumption opens this narrative. Up until today, it wasn't acknowledged, televised, or published. You are now reading the words that were once buried, despite everything. The man at the heart of this enigmatic exchange, Einstein, Albert. 1 year before his death, in 1954, Einstein reportedly had a very private and intimate conversation that was immediately classified by those who overheard it. The scientific establishment denied the existence of this interview for decades. However, in the 21st century, a startling discovery was made, buried deep under the lost personal records of Dr. Kurt Gödel, a colleague thinker and close friend of Einstein. It turned out to be more than just an interview. The rare occasion when one of the greatest minds in history expressed his opinions on what happens to us when we die was more akin to a confession. "It's not my science," he declared. "Only what we can see and measure is covered by what most people refer to as science. However, it totally disregards anything that cannot be accounted for by a formula. I want you to pay close attention now," he added. "Until the public is ready to hear it, what I'm about to tell you must remain between us. Death is not the end of life. This is neither a guess nor a theory. I learned about it by studying the structure of time and space itself, not by studying physics." The reporter sat dumbfounded. "Are you implying that you think the soul exists? Heaven?" Einstein gave a composed, almost poetic response. "Continuation is what I mean. About change. Imagine a wave on the sea. The wave is there as long as the wind is blowing. However, the water remains even after the wind ceases and the wave vanishes. The energy remains. It hasn't disappeared. That wave is the same as human consciousness. It just takes on a transitory form in the body. The consciousness merely returns to the water after the body dies, rather than disappearing." That image lingered in the interviewer's imagination as he sat silently. "How does this fit with the theory of relativity?" he then inquired. Einstein grinned once more. "Matter and energy are crucial to relativity. The observer, however, is another element that it is unable to quantify. The observer. Consciousness is that observer. Furthermore, it is not derived from matter. The brain does not generate it. It is the first. Because someone sees it, everything in the cosmos is possible. The double-slit experiment and quantum entanglement are two examples of equations and paradoxes that led me to this concept, which the ancients had long ago. They all lead to the same conclusion. Consciousness shapes the cosmos, rather than merely being within it. Furthermore, consciousness endures after death. It returns to its origin, pure consciousness, the origin of all things. However, the consciousness within, the essence of who we are, endures. The soul endures, just as energy can only be altered rather than annihilated. Everyone who has ever lived is still here, but they are not in this world. Their memories, feelings, and thoughts are all kept in a much larger, ageless, and expansive entity. The Akashic field is another name for it. The journalist nodded slowly. He recalled weird dreams, déjà vu situations, and peculiar sensations that, until now, had never made sense. "Why is there so much suffering if all of this is true?" he replied softly. "Why disease? Why death?" It took a long moment for Einstein to respond. "Because we learn from pain. Suffering is a classroom, not a kind of punishment. Muscles develop through pushing. In the same way, the spirit flourishes. Every difficult situation and tragedy has a purpose. It makes the soul more resilient, intelligent, and affectionate. Consider young toddlers who recall lifetimes that are impossible for them to have experienced. Consider quantum entanglement, in which two particles instantly influence one another across space. This phenomenon defies explanation unless we acknowledge a more profound, imperceptible bond. Consider those who have almost died and then returned with in-depth knowledge of things they shouldn't have known because they were asleep at the time. He sighed softly. For some time to come, science will continue to deny it. However, denial is not the same as evidence to the contrary. We already know that time and space are not what we once believed thanks to quantum science. In reality, matter is not solid. Everything is made of energy. Everything is interconnected. Scientists will eventually create instruments that can truly identify shifts in consciousness, even after a person's body has passed away. It will only take time. Then, as though to make a point very clear, he leaned forward once more. Here's the true point, though. The main issue wouldn't be resolved even if we were to discover tomorrow that the soul does indeed survive. The reporter appeared perplexed. What's wrong? Einstein made a snap decision. How we live, he stated. If we continue to treat life with disregard, what good is it to know that we won't die? We might live more thoughtfully if we really realized, that our thoughts and deeds never really go away, that they have an impact on the entire universe. More generosity. But are we prepared to bear that burden? The true question is that. The door silently opened at that moment. The professor's housekeeper, a woman in black, nodded respectfully as she peered in. "Please pardon me, gentlemen," she murmured quietly. "It's late. You should get some rest, Professor." Although Einstein gave her a nod, he continued to focus on the interviewer. He remarked, "My spirit still has more to offer, even though my body is exhausted. I want anyone reads this years from now, perhaps decades from now, to know that I never meant to come across as magical. I was looking for the truth. Furthermore, truth is not the property of any lab or church. It is the property of those who seek it out with an open mind." With some effort, he rose up slowly and said, "It's time to say goodbye, but it doesn't end here. Wherever all pathways lead, we will cross paths again." Too affected to speak, the journalist rose up as well. The moment's weight pressed into his chest as he simply nodded. A hand was extended by Einstein. He uttered his last words so gently that they were hardly heard. "Keep in mind that death is merely a portal for those who are prepared to see through it," he remarked. "Keep the good safe. The time will come, even though the world isn't ready now." Einstein looked out as the window let in a sliver of pale morning light.